Steve Jordahl.
And a man who broke into a Connecticut church and stole $3,000 worth of electronics apparently felt enough remorse to leave an apology note. Police have released video of the man they say broke into Mount Olive AME Zion Church in Waterbury at about 1 a.m. Sunday and stole cameras, monitors, and a microphone used to broadcast religious services. Members of the congregation told WVIT-TV he also left a note that said, "Pray for me, sorry brothers, save me," and drew a little sad face. Member Craig Smith says some members of the congregation heeded the note and prayed for the suspect at a later service.
My name's Tim, I'm 17. All the male role models in my life did drugs, so it's no wonder I ended up just like them. I was down to 90 pounds when I came to Teen Challenge, but now I'm healthy and drug-free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We know that Donald Trump has surrounded himself and possibly given instructions to Michael Cohen, someone who he has trusted for a very long time. We know that Donald Trump is engaged in this behavior. This is just, a con that's gone a little too far, and now the federal government is involved.
Mr. Lanny Davis had his client plead guilty to 2 offenses that aren't offenses, that the prosecutor insisted were offenses. That's why he's no good.
I think the American people have a right to expect on a bipartisan basis that the investigation will be thorough on both sides.
Exactly.
Despite what the New York Times and Vanity Fair and all the usual suspects want to make of this.
Right.
This is only part of the story.
We got to live with it. We got to get used to it. We got to live with fake news. There's too many sources. You can't have censorship. You can't pick one person and say, well, we don't like what he's been saying, he's out. So we'll live with fake news. I hate to say it, but we have no choice because that's by far the better alternative. We believe in the right of Americans to speak their minds.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Oh, yeah. I think we're supposed to be wearing sackcloth and ashes because a couple of people were either did a plea deal or were found guilty of doing things on the tax side and the campaign finance side, but still not sick of winning, still no evidence of collusion on the part of the president, still no evidence of obstruction of justice. So basically, the witch hunt has branched off into a bunch of other avenues, and we've still not had anyone looking at, especially on the Mueller team, the impetus for the dossier or any of that other stuff. And what am I talking about? Well, I see everyone is, dancing with their little cloven hooves about this idea that possibly Donald Trump has been implicated in a plea arrangement. Really? So we have some audio on that. We have audio from Mark Levin on Fox News explaining exactly what is and what isn't the real deal about Cohen's plea deal. And of course, Paul Manafort, found guilty of decades-old tax evasion charges and things like that. A bunch of the counts just tossed out, mistrial. So yeah, there's a lot of news to cover. Here's what's going to happen today. First, we're going to break out this Mark Levin audio, and we're going to talk about the legal expertise that he's providing on Fox about this breaking story about these 2 individuals who were in Trump world, one very briefly, as in Manafort, and Cohen, longtime lawyer and private attorney for the president. And what exactly does all of that mean? I loved Mark Levin's breakdown. We're going to do that. And then we're going to talk about the credibility of the Mueller probe. According to Maria Bartiromo of Fox News, there is no credibility there. We'll take your calls during the second segment. And then in the third segment, we're going to rev this show up to 110 miles per hour with Ann Coulter. Her new book is out. I have my copy, Resistance is Futile. It's how the Trump-hating left lost its collective mind. Boom. Awesome. Can't wait to talk to her about this. She's going to be on with us in the last segment. And then we're going to come back with hour 2, and we're going to just kind of wind our way around the Molly Tibbetts story, it's a tragedy, but there are a few salient points that have to be made here. And I'm still trying to get over how much vitriol I've seen online social media by people, like they look like normal people from their Twitter feeds. I'm not talking about bots or trolls, people with 4 followers. I'm talking about people with blue check marks who've had things to say about Molly Tibbetts being killed that, honestly, if you were on the right and you said this about somebody being killed, you'd be run out of town on a rail. But leftists have different standards. And then we're going to talk about Claire McCaskill. She's under the microscope now here in the state of Missouri for her Senate seat. And she says it's going to be a close race. And she has a few things to say about how perfect she has to be. That's news to us Missourians because she's been voting against the will of the people of Missouri for the entire time she's been in the Senate. But, I mean, if she's going to be perfect now, better late than never. So right now, let's dig into this. We have Mark Levin. He's talking about the revelations that have come forward. And, it's all like third hand because we're hearing from this attorney, this Clinton world, this is a guy, he's been in the Clinton world for decades. He's been out on all of the shows, just saying all the most outrageous things. But we're talking about a plea deal. Now, what's the difference between a conviction, as we see in the Manafort case, and a plea arrangement that's been made to prevent, a trial from occurring? There's a huge difference legally. And so instead of taking it from me, not a lawyer, don't play one on TV, let's listen to Mark Levin, number 5.
All right, I want to address Michael Cohen. How did we get to that? I want to help the law professors, the constitutional experts, the criminal defense lawyers, the former prosecutors, and of course the professors. I want to help them understand what the law is. The general counsel for the Clinton mob family, Lanny Davis, he had his client plead to 2 counts of criminality that don't exist. These campaign finance violations that all over TV, they're saying implicates the President of the United States directly. First, let's back up. It is a guilty plea. It is a plea bargain between a prosecutor and a criminal who doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison. That is not precedent. That applies only to that specific case. Nobody cites plea bargains for precedent. That's number 1. Number 2, just because a prosecutor says that somebody violated a campaign law doesn't make it so. He's not the judge. He's not the jury. We didn't adjudicate anything. It never went to court. That's number 2.
Okay, so since it didn't go to court and since this doesn't create a precedent, so the fact that Michael Cohen has alleged all of these things against the president, it still remains to be his word against the president's. And none of the statements that he's made are going to be, this is not settled law that the president has done anything. And if it were to go to trial against the president, if there was to be some kind of impeachment hearings or something like that, it's Michael Cohen's word against the president of the United States and any supporting evidence that Michael Cohen might have and any supporting evidence that the president might have to prove the veracity of what they're stating is their side of the event, their side of the story. So that's important. What we're hearing and seeing all over media, at least what I've seen all last night and this morning, is a bunch of people on the left gleefully hopping around and, doing all kinds of backflips and celebratory hand claps because they think this amounts to some ironclad indictment of President Trump. No, this amounts to Michael Cohen saying under advice of counsel, which it sounds like his counsel wasn't that hot. He didn't have the best legal representation. They want something they can use to impeach the president. So they've thrown Michael Cohen under the bus with his own permission in order to get that. And it remains to be seen whether or not that will actually come to fruition. Meanwhile, it doesn't amount to anything tangible against the president unless Mueller comes forward with an indictment or some kind of report to Congress that would then cause Congress to impeach. Now, in my opinion, this looks like a lot of saving face. It looks like Mueller trying to have something that he can convict someone in Trump world of, that he can say he flipped him, and then that person can provide testimony against the president. But without corroborating evidence, what is it really? But more hearsay, more, I can't stand the fact that the pantsuit of America didn't win the presidency, so Donald Trump's evil, he's a Nazi, he's also guilty of something, let's just figure out what it is. And for anybody who's in the audience who thinks, well, that's what he deserves, is it what you deserve? Remember, our rule of law in this country is based upon innocent until proven guilty, and that all are equal under the law, that justice is blind. So if you think politically motivated prosecutions of individuals is a good thing, then please cue yourself up and be prepared for your turn. If you don't think that's right, if you think that the justice that is given out to people should be equal regardless of their political stature, their position, their job, their ethnicity, their gender, 2 genders, hope you're triggered. If you believe that, then you should see something wrong with this. Fruit of the poisonous tree should apply, because the dossier, which was used to begin all of the listening that was done, all of the spying that was done, was provided by the opposing political campaign and paid for by the opposing political candidate. So what are we even still doing talking about this? Well, we have to talk about this, because otherwise we need to talk about Molly Tibbetts and how she was killed by an illegal immigrant. Another Kate Steinle, only different part of the country. Or we have to talk about the booming economy and all the things the president has been doing that have improved the lives of Americans in tangible ways. We have to talk about his uptick in support from the Black community. We have to talk about the reduction in regulations. We have to talk about the huge omnibus spending bill that nobody who's on the right who cares about government spending and actually doing something about our deficit likes that spending bill. We're wondering, is the president going to go back and clean that up? But he needs to seat a new Congress first. We need to get through the midterms so we can see if we can get some people who have enough cojones to actually do something, to actually support the president in their votes and not be worried about whether or not they're going to be reelected or who's going to say mean things about them on cable TV. But, goodness gracious, what am I doing? How can we talk about any of those things when we just need to sit around and twiddle our thumbs? And if wishes were stars and stars were unicorns and we could ride unicorns off into the sunset, then yeah, we'd have a guilty president and we'd be looking at, Vice President Pence. But that's not what's happening here. We've still seen no evidence that the president has colluded on anything. So here's Mark Levin talking about the kind of legality. And obviously there have been some statements made by Rudy Giuliani that contradict what Michael Cohen has said has happened in the chain of events surrounding these payments to these women that the president had these relationships with in the precursor to the 2016 campaign. Regardless of that, it's not illegal to make agreements with people for their silence. It's illegal to do so to influence an election. And I think that's the crux of the issue here. It's number 6.
A campaign expenditure under our federal campaign laws is an expenditure solely for campaign activity. A candidate who spends his own money or even corporate money for an event that occurred not as a result of the campaign, it is not a campaign expenditure. Let me give a few examples to help people understand this, especially the American people. Let's say, I wrote these down. Let's say a candidate had said, we owe vendors a whole lot of money. We've had disputes with them, but I want you to go ahead and pay them. I'm a candidate. I don't want all this negative publicity. So he says to his private lawyer, you pay them, I'll reimburse you, get it done. Is that illegal? It's perfectly legal. Yet according to the prosecution of the Southern District of New York, it's paid at the direction of the candidate to influence an election. Yes, Mr. Prosecutor, how stupid is your point? It's not a crime. More. Let's say this candidate settles a lawsuit that was initiated before he becomes a candidate, and he says to his personal lawyer, I want you to settle that lawsuit. You can use my corporate funds, my private funds, whatever it is. That is perfectly legal, too. The prosecutor would say, but that influenced the election. So what?
So was it done to influence the election? And that would be the big if here. That would be the big question. President Trump, did you ask for the payment to be made so that you could influence the election, or so that you could get this out of the way so you could move forward with your campaign? Or instead of leading questions, I'm sure that would be considered leading. Why did you ask your attorney to make this payment on your behalf so that you could reimburse him? What was the chain of events surrounding that? And then the proposed illegality or legality of the payment could be assessed. Obviously, it is in Michael Cohen's best interest to make the assertion to Mueller and his team that this was done to influence the election, because that gives the Mueller team what they want. Because they don't want to go home with egg on their faces after 500 days of investigating the president for collusion and trying to collude with the Russians specifically. Because last I checked, Michael Cohen's not a Russian. if we're looking for Russian collusion and how the Russian oligarchs worked with Donald Trump, an agent of the Russian government, to materially impact the election of the United States of America through hacking and use of WikiLeaks, how does Michael Cohen paying some, person from the past, from 10, 15 years before, how does that connect up? Now, I know, again, if wishes were unicorns, etc., liberals are going to be, they're already making up wild and improbable stories about how all of this connects together. But for those of us who are living in the real world and who we still remember the original reason why we need a special prosecutor, that's James Comey. James Comey, who was recently fired, James Comey, who he doesn't have enough integrity to fill up a pinky, let alone enough for us to actually believe anything he says about this. He's the reason we have a special prosecutor, not because anything was actually done wrong, if they have any evidence of any wrongdoing. But please explain to me how this all connects up. We'll be back right after this. Stay there.
When our health insurance renewal notice arrived last fall, my wife and I made the decision to drop our plan. With the monthly premiums and deductible, we'd have to pay $30,000 just to use it. So we did our homework and switched to Medishare. The cost savings are incredible, over $500 a month, and we don't have to pay for services we don't need or don't agree with. Then, out of the blue, she had to have emergency surgery. Scary stuff. $150,000 in hospital bills, and Medishare members took care of everything. All we paid was our small portion. I'm a doctor who's been in healthcare for 20 years, and this is one of the most impressive programs I've ever seen. Thank God she's fully recovered, and now we're telling everyone about Medishare.
Call 855-PSALM-23 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. Medishare. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I want you to think of a Christian leader God has used in your spiritual formation. This person's ministry has enriched your life. Your walk with Christ is stronger because of him or her. Can you pinpoint what qualities in that leader really make the difference? Because I guarantee you it takes more than education or talent to make a great leader. We see some key ingredients of a godly leader in 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verses 1 through 3. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did right in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of his father David, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. For in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David. And in the 12th year he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherah poles, the carved images, and the molten images. So what really made the difference in Josiah's life? Well, number one, he had the resolve to do what was right in the sight of God. I don't know where it came from, but somewhere along the line he developed an insatiable appetite to do what was right before God. Number two, he resolved to seek him and his wisdom. There was a moment-by-moment dependency upon God. He continually sought the Lord. Then thirdly, he resolved to courageously act based upon what God had told him to do. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. What I just described is what biblical success and leadership is really all about. Determined to be a godly difference maker. Order your life and decisions based upon what God wants, and you will indeed make a difference.
You've been listening to Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz, pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in Roswell, Georgia, and heard on the weekly program Living a Legacy. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here today. I am so excited about our interview that's coming up in the next segment. Right now, I want to talk about the credibility of the Mueller probe. So first off, if you want to call into the show, we can't do calls in the last segment because we're going to be speaking to Ms. Coulter about her book, Resistance is Futile. So excited about that. Right now, if you want to call into the show and talk about this, this whole idea that somehow a plea bargain implicates the president and makes him it's like unindicted co-conspirator. I've even seen that. Let's talk about that. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Oh my goodness. Okay, guess what, you guys? It's now. So I'm turning off Fangirl Stacy and going strictly into radio mode because I have to be professional to deal with what I consider to be one of the preeminent minds on political commentary on the right side of the political spectrum in America today. It's my pleasure to welcome Ann Coulter. She's a New York Times bestselling author 12 times over, and she's joining us today to talk about her latest book, The Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. And thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you. Can you turn my volume up?
Hey, I'm going to do my best on that end. Hopefully Devin can do that.
These hotel phones, I can barely hear you.
Okay, so is that any better? Is this better?
Not really, but let's try a few questions because I'm a big talker anyway.
I know. So I really want everyone to hear you, Ann, because I'm well into the book. I just got my hands on it. And as usual,
good. These are always the best interviews.
Yeah. So you're skewering them in a way that only you can about the ridiculousness of what they're saying about the president, and perfect timing with the issuance, because now we get to hear how the president is an unindicted co-conspirator because Michael Cohen made a plea deal.
Yes. This is covered briefly and amusingly in my book. You will be prepared for anything that happens with my book. Campaign finance violation, please give me a break. This jaywalking is a greater threat to the public safety. And as I say in the book, if what Trump had done were even a campaign finance violation, in which case, oh my gosh, you'd have to pay a fine, then John Edwards would be on death row. He had gazillionaire donors of his as he was running for president supporting the lifestyle, living habits, the homes, the food, and the newborn baby of John Edwards' mistress. The question you always need to ask yourself with the campaign finance laws, this is why many people think they're possibly unconstitutional and unenforceable, at least in some instances, not in the egregious, obvious straw contributor case, but in terms of expenditures, was this a campaign expenditure? Well, would Trump have done this if he had not been running for president, or would he say, oh yeah, I don't care, even though my entire business depends on my name. Trump is on all my buildings, my resorts. Oh yeah, also I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have this young son, Barron, not to say anything of his grown sons. Would he say, yeah, I don't care, I'll let this grifter, I'll pay her off, and say, let them think, or not pay her off and just have her go around claiming that we had an affair, which may or may not be true, by the way. I assume this is a nuisance payment. $130,000 isn't a lot of money. The donors to John Edwards were spending millions of dollars to support his mistress. Now that he's not running for president, are they still funding her lifestyle? I don't think so. I think that was pretty clearly related to the fact that he was running for president and his wife was dying of cancer. Nonetheless, that prosecution was widely ridiculed throughout legal circles and legal publications, and of course, in the end, the jury acquitted him. So, I mean, anything can be called a campaign expenditure. What if Trump spends money on hires a new florist for Mar-a-Lago? Because, how's it going to look if the guy running for president, you walk into his big resort and the flowers are wilting? Well, that was for the campaign. I mean, you can't do anything. What if he's sued by an employee for discrimination of some sort? He can't settle that case because, the only reason he's settling it is because he's running for president. These are extremely hard cases to prove. The left is once again saying, the noose is tightening, he's in trouble now. How many times have we been through this before? It's something I make fun of in my book. At some point in resistance, the noose has got to tighten.
Absolutely. And so I knew you'd have the answer on that. And I also kind of figured, obviously I haven't had a chance to read the entire book, but I'm pretty deep into it. And one thing you're doing over and over again in the book is you're showing how if it's a leftist who's doing this, the left doesn't care. They don't care what kind of finance laws are flouted. They don't care about anything. But if it's Donald Trump, it's a capital case. And one of the things, you have Chapter 7, Hillary finally runs an effective campaign with our intelligence agencies. And this is something that has been largely unexplored on the left in the media, which is the connection between the Hillary Clinton campaign, the FBI, the DOJ, and this so-called investigation into collusion by the president that's ongoing, the Mueller investigation.
Yes, I write about, this is expanded with more quotes and proof in the book, but I have, this is the topic of my column that I just posted at AnnCoulter.com. It'll also be on Daily Caller and Breitbart.com and various other reputable websites. Yahoo, I think, still carries my column. In any event, the whole Russia collusion nonsense, this is an old game plan of Hillary's. Whenever she gets caught in a scandal, or her husband is caught in a scandal, or there's some sort of mess she needs to get out of, she is always imagining these apocryphal enemies conspiring against her. Going back at least as far as I guess is known nationally, she probably did in the state of Arkansas as First Lady too, but we don't know about those cases. When her husband was running for president in 1992, Jennifer Flowers steps forward, and Hillary says her response to the Jennifer Flowers allegations, which turned out to be true, by the way, was, this is all a man named Sheffield Nelson who ran against my husband for governor, and he lost, and it's a good thing he lost, because he was a negative force in Arkansas politics, and really he's just a very bitter man. This Jennifer Flowers thing is all from him. It's a sad thing to see. When she came into the White House, lays off the entire long-serving White House travel office staff. There's a huge hue and cry. It was so sleazy. She did it to make room for her friends. So it doesn't look good. She looks like Madame Defarge. And as a consequence, her response is to accuse the head of the travel office, Billy Dale, of embezzlement. He is criminally prosecuted by the federal government, run by her husband, acquitted in about 30 seconds, but left jobless and nearly bankrupt. Of course, with the Monica Lewinsky scandal, again, turned out to be true. She went on the Today Show and blamed the vast right-wing conspiracy conspiring against her, and it goes on and on and on. So when the WikiLeaks documents went up, and we still don't know whether it was the Russians or someone else, no evidence has been presented for that, by the way. Not that it matters if it was the Russians. I still say so what. But anyway, the documents go up on WikiLeaks. Democrats are horrified. They're embarrassed and enraged with Hillary. They're enraged with the DNC having fixed the primary election against Sanders and for Hillary. So what does she do? She accuses the Russians of conspiring to stop her, this mysterious enemy. Curiously, she had never really said anything about Russia until then, other than to talk about the deep respect she and Vladimir Putin had for one another. But they needed some sort of enemy. They needed an enemy where Trump had done some sort of business, and he had the Miss Universe contest over there. Now, this is the most interesting thing, and then I will wrap up this little segment of the description of my book. When Robbie Mook first launched the Russian conspiracy on the eve of the Democratic National Convention, at the time, the entire news media, including the news media, desperately in love with Hillary Clinton. The New York Daily News that kept putting Trump on its cover as a clown. The New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, they all scoffed at the claim. The New York Times in particular called it a remarkable moment, saying never before had one presidential candidate accused another of conspiring with a foreign power, particularly Russia, and all these newspapers pointed out that all Mook could cite was unnamed experts. So the media kind of covered for this. They didn't really report a lot on it. Hillary brought it up at debates, but everyone was sort of embarrassed by this insane conspiracy theory. It wasn't until disaster struck and Trump won the election that suddenly the media went back over their notes and decided maybe there's something to this Russia business after all. That's what we've been living with. Just another Hillary conspiracy theory for the last 2 years.
I'm exhausted by it, Ann. I have to say, out of all the things I thought I would have to put up with for the rest of my natural life, I never thought it would be that Hillary Clinton would never go away, that the Clintons would constantly be running for office, and then they would pass the baton to Chelsea, which looks like we're really close to that happening. In the book, you actually go into great detail, which is not a shock. I've read others of your books, and it's amazing the level of detail and historical accuracy you're able to achieve. But you actually lay out in that chapter, intelligence agencies, how all of this came together, and none of it was important except, as you just pointed out, when Trump won, then all of a sudden it was like, well, wait a minute. We don't really like Russia, because they loved Russia when Obama was president. So after
they loved Russia when Russia was engaging in mass murder and shooting down American planes.
Yes.
And staging gulags and show trials. Oh, they have loved Russia back when it was an actual threat to us. Now that it's just a normally corrupt country, it's the most psychotically evil country in the world.
It really, honestly, I'm shocked because remember, they loved it so much that when Barack Obama said, after my election, I'll be much more flexible to a Russian, government employee, they were like, that's nothing. He should be flexible. They're an ally, but now they're the devil. Meanwhile, China's raking us over the coals, and we're not getting any news about that. And then in your next chapter, let's skip ahead to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is called James Comey, Please Fire Me. Oh my gosh, I'm being fired. I love the way you take him apart in here methodically, bit by bit, because he deserves it. I just wish more people would, number one, buy the book, get it on Audible so you can hear Ann read it to you in her own voice, and then understand that James Comey is not just a bad employee. He's someone who's acting to subvert the rule of law in this country.
Yes, I mean, the most interesting thing about the Comey chapter, which I hadn't really noticed until I went through and what I do, because I don't have a job, is just read through years of New York Times articles, of transcripts of things like this. I have a Nexus file, and boy, have I used it to write this book. And what was interesting, and to look at the hearings and how this thing, why do we have a special counsel? Why was he appointed? Well, he was appointed, Stacey, because of the lying insinuations of James Comey for months, as he's secretly telling Trump on the side, don't worry, we're not investigating you. He keeps hinting at Senate hearings that the president is under investigation. So when Trump fired Comey, all of the news was the New York Times with its echoes of Watergate. Everything's always an echo of Watergate when there's a Republican president. Echoes of Watergate. And throughout the news media, it was Trump's under investigation. He fires the person investigating him. Well, as we now know, Trump was not under investigation. But why did we think he was under investigation? Because of the lying insinuations of James Comey. By the time 2 months later, when Comey finally admitted Trump wasn't under investigation, oh, well, too late. We already appointed a special counsel.
Okay, I don't know how much longer we have you. Are you here for the next segment or part of the next segment?
I'm in a terrible rush, Stacey, and also I can barely hear you, and it's driving me crazy. I would so love to do this again, maybe next week when I'm on a better phone and can hear you more clearly and
Perfect.
I'm not rushing.
You know what? I will take that definite appointment. We'll work that out in the background. I want to say thank you. Sorry about this audio. Thank you so much for coming on today. I've shown the book on the live stream. It's Ann Coulter, you guys. My first time interviewing her. I've fangirled. I've held it in. You're so awesome. I don't even think you realize. Thank you for coming on.
I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be interviewed by someone who's read even part of the book. It always makes the interview so much more fun.
Well, I'm going to finish it. And next week when we talk, I want you to explain the relationship between Black America and white America due to our shared cultural history with slavery and the Civil War and after that, and how it doesn't apply to illegal immigrants. That's the next time we talk. Thank you, Ann.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes. That has always been the Republican position. A lot of Republicans have forgotten it, but I'm bringing it back.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. The book is Resistance is Futile, and the author is Ann Coulter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacey. Talk to you next week.
All right. Talk to you then. So first of all, we will fix this audio issue I know I saw people online saying they could hear just fine, but I hate it when the guest can't hear because it impacts the interview. I have to say, I knew she was going to be fantastic. We had a little bit of a scheduling thing going back and forth because she's actually traveling doing promotions for the book. And it was great of her to carve some time out for us today. I'm going to be dining out on this for like at least a week. If you guys were at our table last night, you would have seen my husband and the kids. We were all eating and everybody's going through. We go through one at a time. Tell us your good and your bad for the evening. And so anything good that happened to you, anything bad, and you share it at the table. It's a great way to, spur the conversation on. And I was like, tomorrow, Ann Coulter, my show. And the forks went down. Everyone turned and looked at me. I was like, what? Because we listened to Adios America in the car on one of our vacations, and other books of hers, the kids have heard parts of it. And so I wasn't able to get my hands on the book until like early yesterday, and that's why I'm only about halfway through, but amazing to have her on the show. So really excited. In fact, what's exciting about the next segment is that I get to talk to you. So we're going to have a regular call-in segment. I need you guys to call in. Talk to me about what you heard with Ann Coulter. It's 866-963-2037. Be right back.
Part of growing in Christ is learning how to encourage others. In doing so, you always gain strength for your own journey. It's kind of like you can't pray for someone in earnest and remain angry at them. You may not like what they've done, but the presence of God has a way of sifting the wrath right out of you. You can't encourage someone else in your walk and remain numb to the encouraging words yourself. As you encourage others, you begin to see that all things are possible in Christ Jesus. Your obstacles become visibly obtainable. In this world of self-centeredness and all about me, be extraordinary. Don't be the norm. Each day, stop and take a me poll to determine just where you are in your walk with the Lord. Encourage your brother or sister in the Lord in that area and watch God do some amazing things in your life. Your deliverance is resting in the power of your tongue. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
My name's Antonio. My drinking had gotten to the point where I was embarrassed to go to the liquor store. But when I came to Teen Challenge, I finally broke the stronghold alcohol had on my life. Now I'm truly free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. So much for the August recess on Capitol Hill, or perhaps so much for the August session. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell initially planned to keep senators in Washington for most of the month, foregoing the customary and coveted 5 to 6 week August recess on Capitol Hill. But McConnell's summertime project didn't quite materialize. The Senate met on August 1st before seizing a nearly 2-week summertime respite, returning for session at noon on August 15th. Then the Senate convened for less than an hour, recessed, took a procedural vote late that afternoon, adjourned for the day, came back into session for a couple of votes the following day, and then cut down only to return this past Monday. The Senate was technically on the clock about 29 hours. Most senators weren't even in Washington 17 hours. McConnell's office portrayed the week as a hectic one. The leader's aide sent Capitol Hill reporters a memo with the subject line, quote, busy, busy. The missive declared that the Senate would remain in session the rest of August despite, quote, rumors to the contrary. And what else is on the docket? McConnell's office says, quote, many other items. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Okay. Did you hear that? I was talking to Ann Coulter. So I've met her before back in 2012. She probably doesn't remember this because her whole life is just these, writing the books, researching the books, and meeting so many people. But it was at CPAC 2012, and I was on the Radio Row and I don't mean on it. Like I didn't have a radio show back then. In fact, I just gotten started. My blog was brand spanking new. It wasn't even a year old. I'm there at CPAC, and I went down to Radio Row because everyone, that's where you get to meet people, because everyone who's written a book or is a pundit of any kind, and especially the most respected commentators, go down Radio Row and they sit, and it's whatever time you have available to have them on your show. So you keep your mics open, and they come and they sit down and they talk to the radio hosts. And I knew a couple of the radio hosts who were on Radio Row that particular CPAC, but I was not working there in that capacity. Like I wasn't on radio. And I did a couple of radio hits, but it was just like, this is years ago, you guys. This is 2012, my first CPAC ever. So I'm standing there, and Alan West comes down. He starts sitting down in the chairs and getting interviewed. And in between, he stands up and he starts shaking people's hands. I was like, I'm Stacey Washington. Oh my goodness, it's such an honor to meet you, sir. I'm a veteran too. And he was like, amazing, great to meet you. And we shook hands. And then after that, all of a sudden there's like a lot of noise. You can hear people talking. And I glance down and I see Ann Coulter moving through, and she starts sitting down. I mean, and we're talking about her person, whoever that was with her assistant, had her on a tight schedule. She would sit down for 6 or 7 minutes and then up and on to the next person. And if you didn't have an empty chair for her, she went to the next radio show. And so in between all of that, I went down to the very end and I waited, and she was getting up from the chairs and people were approaching her, and I just waved, and she turned to me and I said, "Hi, I'm Stacey Washington and I'm a huge fan." And she said, "Oh, thank you so much for being here. And, how many times have you been to CPAC?" I said, "Oh, I've been here. This is my first time. I've never been here before." And we just talked for a split second. I don't even remember what else it was that we said. And then she said, "Well, I have to go. I'm on a tight schedule." And I was like, "It's nice to meet you." She's just as tall and thin in person as it appears that she is on television. She's striking in person and very, very friendly. What most people try to say about her is that she's unfriendly, rude, or what have you. She's not. She was really friendly. I didn't see her frown once the whole time that I watched her move through the Radio Row. And there were other people there, and she was just really personable and great, just like she is on the radio. And I've heard so many of her other radio interviews on other stations, other hosts, and she's always the same, information-packed and really fun to talk to. So this was really an honor for me. Bucket list item, something that I'm just so exciting so excited to get to do. Now, unbelievable. If we have anybody who wants to call in and talk about that, again, call-ins are open at 866-963-2037. Right now, I want to listen to Maria Bartiromo talking about the credibility in the Mueller probe, unless Clinton is also investigated. And this is kind of important, I thought, in the big scheme of things, because so Maria Bartiromo has this background in Wall Street, but she interviews all of the best people, and she has these fantastic legal minds on her show. And so this is one of those interviews. It's number 4.
If you're dispassionate about this and not involved in the mix, the hyperventilating by the opposition party about, trying to take down a president, if you looked at this dispassionately, I do not believe that Bob Mueller is positioned to bring a federal felony campaign finance violation against a sitting president. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Now, this may be the subject of information that is disclosed in a report that Bob Mueller submits to Rod Rosenstein at the end of this investigation, and ultimately that would be sent on to Congress and released to the public. It might be the subject, obviously, of some consideration, depending on in whose hands the House of Representatives is. That's right. About an impeachment inquiry. But we're a long way away from that. And also, again, going back to the evidence, just because Mr. Trump's lawyer says that he was directed by the candidate to do this doesn't mean that Donald Trump was complicit, knowingly complicit in a federal felony. And all this talk yesterday about, well, this proves that Donald Trump was involved in a conspiracy to violate the law, I think that's well short of the mark. I mean, that would, we have a long way to go, and a prosecutor would have a long way to go before such a case would ever be brought.
And that's totally like that's where the rubber meets the road here. Not only because we got to hear from Ann Coulter about this same subject, and she has the whole thing laid out in the book, but the person you heard speaking there is Robert Ray. He's a prominent litigator and former federal prosecutor and independent counsel for the Whitewater investigation. So he's got some experience with this stuff. And of course, with the time being short and Ann Coulter needing to go on to other interviews and she's got a tight schedule, I'd actually highlighted this at the end of the book. It's such an amazing quote. And what I did was I went through and I skipped to the end. Like I was about halfway through last night. I was running out of time. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't get through. So I went to the end and read the last chapter because I had to know at least what the end of the book was. And so I've got less than half of it left to read. And so in this last page, she says, the country will be in very bad shape if Trump doesn't arise from his torpor and keep his campaign promises. But if we get nothing else from his presidency, at least the media will be totally discredited. He brings out the best in them. Trump may be shallow, narcissistic, disloyal, and the crudest kind of braggart, but he's like chemotherapy for the country. It's unpleasant to go through. You vomit, your hair falls out, but it kills cancer cells and you live. Trump's presidency may be an unpleasant thing to go through, but everyone on the New York Times editorial board will die. And who knows? Maybe Trump will keep his promises and end up on Mount Rushmore, his granite hair impervious to the breeze. As he likes to say, we'll see. I encourage you to get the book and read it. It's a page turner. And I just, you know how it is when you have to do life. I had some actual school things to do today at the kids' school, which was a really good start back to the beginning of the school year. But this was a real treat today. And so you might not, I don't think we have any callers right now. I don't see any callers over here. I'm using my phone again on the call screening. So I want to also cover a little bit more of just the ridiculousness of this news. And I also want to point out on the YouTube live stream, we've got people on there talking about they thought the interview was great. They're planning on buying the book. A couple people have already ordered the book and it should be there in a couple of days, Amazon, 2 days. And so if you're in that group, you guys, I would love it if you guys would tweet me the pictures. I have one on my Instagram if you want to see what I'm talking about. I have my Ann Coulter book and I'm holding it up in front of a picture of the book on the Amazon page. And I put that on my Instagram and it went out over Twitter and Facebook too. So if you want to do that, that would be super cool for us to do to kind of commemorate the fun here. And I am pursuing a second interview so we can talk about that other subject from her book, Adios America. This is super important. I think sometimes people can do research and you read it and you're like, wow, that's interesting. Other times the research that they do, that they bring you information, it literally can change your view of something. And when I was reading Adios America and I read what Ann Coulter wrote about the shared history of American blacks and whites, but because of the Civil War, I felt like in that moment that I read that and then I shared it with my family, that it was kind of a game changer, because it's not that I didn't know that. All of us know the history of this country and how we have slavery and all of that. But to term it the way she did about the connection that we have, that we're one people, that Black Americans who trace their lineage back to, the Civil War and before, and white Americans with the same background, so families that have been here for generations, that we're really one people group. And that is something unique to say, because when you look at white Americans and Black Americans, we don't really look that much alike. It's not like you look at you look like your sisters with that lady. No, but we are. We're actually, that's how closely tied together we are. And that's something important that she has really expounded upon in her book. It's so well done. And so I want to, go into that with her so that you listeners can hear it straight from her. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, get Adios America on Audible and listen to her explain it to you. But she hopefully will be back with us shortly, as soon as we can make schedules work, to talk about that. So in addition to the news about, the unindicted co-conspirator, Donald Trump, according to Cohen, who has now proven himself to be a disloyal turncoat and an individual who, he clearly, he didn't know what he was doing with his business prospects, and he didn't have a clear understanding of the law, and now he's gotten outside of it, and he's been drawn into something that, well, honestly, if he'd never been associated with Donald Trump, he'd have gotten away with this, as Democrats have done. Generations of Democrats have gotten away with this same type of activity that Cohen just had to make a plea deal over. The only reason they need a plea deal from Cohen on this is because they want to ensnare Donald Trump. That's it. They don't care anything about prosecuting him. He's a means to an end. But there's also this story about this young woman, Molly Tibbetts. Now, I want to point out that there's already been online, if you go to, I believe the Right Scoop has a couple stories. Most of the right-leaning outlets are now documenting the heinous Free Beacon. In fact, I believe we're going to listen to a little bit of audio from a MSNBC guest made some flippant remarks about Molly Tibbet. Basically, the left feels like this death is just an inconvenient support for Donald Trump's fervor about immigrations and customs enforcement agents and wanting to support them as law enforcement officials and his desire for a wall. This is just another example of how leftists can take the death of a young woman who was innocent out on a jog in broad daylight, running for health and fitness. They can take that, the senseless murder of this young woman, and turn it into a political football, completely desensitized from the fact that this was a living, breathing girl. And for people out there who are, I've even seen some people saying, well, why should we care about Molly Tibbetts? These young black women have been kidnapped. No, I care about all of them. It's not as if a human being can't care about Molly Tibbetts and also care about other women who aren't getting as much publicity as Molly Tibbetts' family has been able to get for her. But the fact is, it is very inconvenient for Democrats that after Kate Steinle, and they effectively removed the sting of the death of Kate Steinle from all of the public eye except people on the right, and they did that to complete horror of her family, to see their daughter dehumanized in the media because she was killed by an illegal alien. And now here we are, they're going to do it again. They're going to completely dehumanize Molly Tibbet, who, if you look at her tweets, what is especially galling about it is that Molly Tibbetts appears to have been somewhat of a liberal, somewhat of on the D side. But they're literally now going to dehumanize her and act as if she didn't matter because an illegal alien killed her. They would rather a white Trump supporter killed her so they could actually be sad about her death. But because an illegal immigrant killed her, they're not going to be able to feel anything at all. I mean, it is stunning, but just mark my words. That's where they're headed with this. Not only are they no longer going to talk about her, in 24 hours, the story will have disappeared from the media completely. And they will never, ever hold to task this person who did this to her because he's an illegal immigrant. He's in a protected class. Unbelievable. Let's go to the phones. We have a couple minutes here. Jacob in Alabama, thank you for calling the show.
Are you there?
Hi, I can hear you now. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, in reference to what you're saying, first of all, I think this will help you out a whole lot. Remember that the Democratic Party and the media, they have taken it to the point of being demonically possessed. And the other thing when you mentioned about not Kate Steinle, but this other Molly, is that, see, a lot of people in the black community and on the other side of the aisle, they don't understand certain things about forgiveness. And I'm looking at Matthew 6:14 and 15. And the Lord says this: if you do not forgive others, then your Father will not forgive you the wrongs you have done. Okay? But after that, did you ever notice that it said, except African Americans?
No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it don't. It don't make no exceptions. We all have to forgive from the heart whoever has done us wrong, whether it's past, present, or future. We are one people. And a lot of people don't get that. They think, well, no, I'm the exception because I'm African American, I'm Jewish, or whatever. No, we all have to forgive the way Jesus forgave. And there's no excuse to do anything less.
All right. I can't disagree with you. Thank you so much for calling the show. An excellent point. And someone has actually tweeted me, Emeritus Eric tweeted me about the MSNBC guest who made the statements about Molly Tibbet, the thoughtless statements. She actually apologized. And a lot of people are on Twitter and my timeline saying, I can't believe you're accepting the apology. It's a non-apology. And he says, should her apology be accepted or should she be eternally shunned from the face of the planet like those people on the right who've tried to apologize for past misgivings? Well, that's a huge double standard. You're right. People on the right have to be run out of the rails, completely dissed and dismissed, like Roseanne Barr. People on the left, like Samantha Bee, they can say horrible things and keep their jobs. It's a double standard. But it doesn't mean that we're held to less of a standard because we recognize other people aren't being held to a standard, because ultimately we will all be judged in exactly the same way and nothing will be missed. All right, we'll be back with more after these messages. It'll be hour 2 coming up.
Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. Our motto is truth, wisdom, and empowerment. We felt that this motto reflects what we want to be to the urban community. We ask God today to give our community wisdom from God, truth, which is Jesus Christ, and empowerment through the Holy Spirit as we seek to be the community that God has called the Black community to be. Stay connected at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. The illegal immigrant accused in the death of Molly Tibbetts has appeared in court. Fox's Jeff Manasso has more.
24-year-old Christian Rivera is being arraigned in Poweshiek County Court in the murder of 20-year-old Iowa college student Molly Tibbetts, who vanished July 18th and whose body was discovered early yesterday in a cornfield outside Brooklyn, Iowa, where Rivera apparently told investigators he took her. A criminal complaint alleges Rivera stalked Tibbetts while she was out for a run, abducted and killed her. Rivera, an illegal immigrant, is being held on $1 million cash bond.
The White House is rejecting calls from Democrats to delay confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Democrats say the hearing should be delayed following the conviction of Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign manager, and the guilty plea of Michael Cohen, who implicated Trump in a federal crime. A Messianic Jewish leader does not think deportation is a strong enough punishment for a former concentration camp guard who has been living in the U.S. for decades. AFN's Chad Garning has more.
Even Democrats are praising President Trump for finally getting 95-year-old Yaki Pauli out of the United States, where he had been living since 1949. 3 decades ago, it was discovered that Pauli had been a guard at a concentration camp in Poland, where thousands of prisoners were murdered. He was stripped of his U.S. citizenship in 2003 and ordered deported, but no other country would take him, so he remained in limbo, living with his wife in Queens, New York, until Trump made his deportation a priority and negotiated his return to Germany. Jan Markell is founder and director of Olive Tree Ministries and co-author of Trapped in Hitler's Hell.
I think for the sake of the Holocaust survivors who are alive, and even for those who've passed away, these folks need to have some kind of consequence in their life for what they've done. And I think deportation, and they just start an all-new life somewhere else, is actually a pretty light sentence. Yet they need to go. They need to leave this country, and I am so glad that Donald Trump and others are acting.
But Markell says even if this man is not held accountable on earth, he will face God's judgment.
They're going to get dealt with in eternity. That's up to the Lord, and it's not our call, but good riddance from America. I do hope he might hear the gospel at some point in time and still be able to repent.
Markell says, unfortunately, there are almost certainly other former Nazi persecutors who remain in the U.S. Some estimates say 10,000 may have made the U.S. their home after the war. I'm Chad Groening.
Heavy rain, strong winds, and dangerous surf are expected to hit Hawaii this week. Hurricane Lane is closing in on Hawaii, and it could hit the entire island chain. Meteorologist Tom Evans lives in Honolulu.
The center of the storm could go over one of the islands. If you look at the uncertainty that we have, especially when we have two turns in this track, those are very difficult to forecast. So confidence is not real high because of the 2 turns. So it's possible that the center could go over one of the islands, but right now the forecast has it staying just south of the islands, but in the strong part of the storm going over the Hawaiian Islands.
Parents lament their teenagers' noses constantly in their phones, but they might want to take stock of their own screen time habits. A study out today from the Pew Research Center found that 2/3 of parents are concerned about the amount of time their teenage children spend in front of screens. Meanwhile, more than half of teens said they often or sometimes find their parents or caregivers to be distracted when the teens are trying to have a conversation with them. In final news this hour, we could learn the fate of Ohio State head football coach Urban Meyer today. Fox's Matt Napolitano has more.
Ohio State University's Board of Trustees will meet with University President Michael Drake to discuss the 2-week-long investigation into what Buckeyes head football coach Urban Meyer knew about past domestic violence claims against now former receivers coach Zach Smith. President Drake will determine Meyer's fate upon review of an investigative committee's final report. Meyer has been on paid leave since August 1st as questions into his handling of domestic abuse allegations came to surface when Zach Smith's ex-wife Courtney revealed that members of Meyer's inner circle, including his wife, knew of the abuse she was suffering at the hands of her ex-husband. Meyer, Zach Smith, and Courtney Smith all met with the panel investigating this matter.
That's it for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We know that Donald Trump has surrounded himself and possibly given instructions to Michael Cohen, someone who he has trusted for a very long time. We know that Donald Trump is engaged in this behavior. This is just, a con that's gone a little too far, and now the federal government is involved.
Mr. Lanny Davis had his client plead guilty to 2 offenses that aren't offenses, that the prosecutor insisted were offenses. That's why he's no good.
I think the American people have a right to expect on a bipartisan basis that the investigation will be thorough on both sides.
Exactly.
Despite what the New York Times and Vanity Fair and all the usual suspects want to make of this.
Right.
This is only part of the story.
We got to live with it. We got to get used to it. We're going to live with fake news. There's too many sources. You can't have censorship. You can't pick one person and say, well, we don't like what he's been saying, he's out. So we'll live with fake news. I hate to say it, but we have no choice because that's by far the better alternative. We believe in the right of Americans to speak their minds.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Oh my goodness. Welcome back to the show. If you're like me, you're like, we're just moving and grooving. We have had a fantastic show so far today, and it's only going to get even better, continue to be fantastic here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Go to American Family Radio's website, afr.net. Hit the subscribe button. Also, do you like our parent company's page, American Family Radio, on Facebook? Also, American Family Association. We've been designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's a badge of honor for us because they only seem to attack people who are seeking to work out their faith in the public sphere, helping others to work out their faith. So be it, Southern Poverty Law Center. Thanks. Hit the like button on those pages. And then join me over at Stacy on the Right on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Love to see you there. Let's go back to the phones. We have Jim in Texas. Hey, Jim, thanks for holding over the break.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Listen, we love your show.
Oh, thank you.
You always do a great job. And my only comment was about Cohen and allegations against Trump and those kind of things.
Yeah.
I think the media and a lot of people think, well, Trump wouldn't have possibly, they're trying to spin it like Trump wouldn't have got elected if this somehow got out or something.
Yeah.
And to me, it's almost like a joke, because to think with the person that he's running against, Hillary Clinton, and her husband, Bill Clinton, and the things that he did and the things that we witnessed with him and the stuff he actually did inside the White House. And then because of some person had an affair in this country. I mean, I hate to say it, that it is too commonplace. You know, it's not God's will, but it does go on. And to think that that would have any influence on the way I voted, because I could not stomach voting for Hillary. There was just no way. We were headed too far left. There's just no telling where we'd be right now if she had gotten in office.
I love what you just said there, because it's so common sense. And I know the reason why, Jim, they can't understand that, the media types, because they don't see anything wrong with Hillary Clinton. But the question I have for you, you're calling from Texas, you know, you're calling from God's country. I was born in Texas, so I got an affinity for Texas. I want to know from you, will it make a difference? Whatever they decide, whatever they can ham-fistedly, you know, trump up against the president, will it make a difference for you in 2020 when the president is up for re-election? If the Democrats are running another Hillary Clinton herself or one of the others like her, will you still feel the same way?
Would make no difference to me at all. I mean, I will vote for him again. If whoever the Republican candidate is for that, I will vote for him. And it's not because I'm lockstep Republican, because the only thing I can see that the Democrats, they have just gone so far off. My dad was a Democrat, and he taught us, whoever's in office, you respect the president, whoever he is at that time. But they're so far away from what he was voting for when he was working and he was actually a union member. They were good back when he was in it, but it's just changed so much.
I agree. Thank you so much for calling the show today. I think the point that you're making is one that Americans across the country would agree with. And these aren't the mainstream Americans who, are on NPR or are listening to the hardcore left. It's just hardworking, everyday Americans. I'm like you. My parents are still Democrats. I remember when Democrats were conservative and they believed in family values, and they weren't very different from Republicans. And that's when my parents were really staunchly Democrats and taught us those ideals, not about being a Democrat, but about being hardworking and having a family and, not having kids out of wedlock and all that stuff. That was what I grew up learning from my parents, going to church, working hard, loving America, flying an American flag. These are not those same people. And I think the point you're making resonates with millions of Americans. And it doesn't really matter if the mainstream media gets it. What matters is if we turn out and vote. And I just hope people will pray and then turn out and vote in the midterms. Don't leave it to somebody else to do what you feel like needs to be done. Thank you, Jim, for calling into the show. If you're listening to this show and you're not of the same political persuasion as I myself are, you gotta pray and vote and do what you feel is best too. But I think Jim made a great point there. It's not like, so I guess the thing that really gets to me, and I think Ann Coulter, she's a research queen. I mean, honestly, if you want to see exactly, like, it's not just that she's giving her opinion here. She's actually got the quotes. She's got the imagery. This headline, Putin-led scheme to aid Trump, report says, that was the banner headline on the New York Times. These people are pulling out all the stops. They have pulled out all of the stops to convict this president in the press, and now they want to convict him through the Mueller investigation of something that, if you read this book, for sure he really hasn't done much. If you compare him to Bill Clinton, and one thing I notice about liberal cohorts is this is what they say to me. They say, oh, so that's all you've got to defend Trump. You just always got to talk about Bill Clinton. Obama's not the president anymore. You always talk about Obama. Well, it's appropriate to compare the treatment of the current president with previous presidents. That's not odd. And if Democrats were being treated to the same double standard, they would have a problem with it. They would say, oh my goodness, these Republicans, they don't know God. They claim they believe in the Bible, but look at how they're acting. Look at these double standards. How could these be real evangelicals? I mean, I've gotten all the insults. Ann Coulter's done a good job of cataloging what they've said and done and what they've been guilty of and putting it into perspective in comparison to Donald Trump, who really, the Access Hollywood tape is the worst they've got on him, that he paid somebody to be quiet about an affair that they had because he was married at the time. That's all they've got. So I've run down before. I'm not doing it again today. All of the different things that Bill Clinton did. I mean, look at the things that happened, the scandals under Obama's watch. No, he didn't have any extramarital affairs, but oh my goodness, the scandals in his government. Come on, the gun running, all of it. It's just crazy that they think we don't remember any of that stuff. So let's now talk about Molly Tibbet and the response. What you just heard at the top of the news from onenewsnow.com. This person, this illegal alien who has killed her and led the police to her body, he is arraigned in court today. So you've got this MSNBC chick. She's on, the TV, and nobody can get me, and none of y'all liberals can get me for calling her a chick, because I'm a chick too, and also she's black and I'm black, so don't try me. She's on MSNBC, and she's talking about Molly Tibbetts and Donald Trump. She's trying to make this connection between the president and ICE and his support of ICE and his support of strong borders, and the fact that, according to her, this, when this person that passed away, it's just like this really flippant attitude towards the death of another person. And as she's talking, her name's Christina Greer. She's frequently on MSNBC, so this isn't her first rodeo, and anybody can make a slip up on TV. So let's get that out of the way first. Anyone can make a slip up on television. Anyone can go on and have a bad night or what have you. This isn't that. This isn't that, okay? Since she's come forward later and apologized, but I want you to hear what she said, because this really is Exhibit A for how they feel about the victims of illegal immigration. They feel this way about Americans who are killed, raped, kidnapped, assaulted, the victims of violent crime at the hands of illegal immigration. But when we talk about the illegal immigrants themselves, well, they're untouchable. How dare you detain them? How dare you separate children from people who aren't their actual relatives to protect them from further rape and assault and sexual abuse? How dare you? But if you're talking about an American born in America, who happens to be white, who happens to have been jogging along a road and killed by an illegal immigrant, well, now, we don't care about that. Let's listen to it. It's number 2.
I don't see, and I've been ringing the alarm on this show for months now, the separation of powers is not working because the Republican Party has not stood up to this president, not once. So even if there's a guilty verdict from Manafort, even though Cohen has turned himself in, 8 counts here, 8 counts there, I still think that they have been so willing to move the goalpost every single time with this president, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, right? The fact that he was even sworn in as president after the Access Hollywood tape let me know for a fact that the Republican Party is actually not working on behalf of the American people. They are working on behalf of Donald Trump. And he's been able to bully them into their silence. And I don't think that today changes much, unfortunately. I'm sure we'll hear what he has to say about this at his rally. But Fox News is talking about, a girl in Iowa and not this, right? And tomorrow morning, we know he'll wake up and tweet and sort of, besmirch the reputation of Michael Cohen and all the people around him and really go back to Mueller. And this is obviously going to boil down to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. It's not boiling down to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama because they're not being tried for anything. They're not being subjected to a witch hunt. Hillary Clinton actually should be tried for something, but she never will. Christina Greer will never have to answer a question about that. I just, I'd love for her to come on my show and just, honestly, not for a ringing through or some kind of, horrible back and forth, nothing hostile. I just would love to know, why is it okay to prosecute Donald Trump for his perceived wrongdoings and to go after him with a special prosecutor, but it's not okay to do the same thing to Hillary? She deleted emails. She intentionally destroyed government property. It is the government's property. Your emails, all that stuff. When you work for the government, all of that stuff belongs to the people of the United States. She deleted it. She also paid for the opposition research and then pawned it off as real stuff through her cohorts in government. Why? What about that? What about the misrepresentations to the FISA court that enabled them to basically flout the law on surveillance and surveil a candidate for the presidency? There's so much there to unpack. She trivializes the death of Molly Tibbetts by saying some girl in Iowa. So later, She comes out, and this was on MSNBC's The Beat. That's what you just heard. And again, her name's Christina Greer. She's a frequent MSNBC guest and a professor at Fordham University. So she came out after she received a huge backlash for saying that on TV. She comes out and she says, you know, again, the quote was, a girl in Iowa who Fox News is talking about, not a University of Iowa student who was brutally murdered by an illegal alien, but, just a girl who Fox News is talking about. So she gets all of this backlash on social media for saying that. So then she goes onto social media and she issues a quick statement. She says, well, first she says, I'm a victim. I offer my condolences. My comment was unintended. So here's a tweet from her. She's Dr._CM Greer on Twitter. Yesterday, I said something flippant that was unintended. Molly Tibbetts was a promising young woman who lost her life. I don't know. Where do you think she lost it? She just tossed it off on the wayside and couldn't remember where she tossed it, Molly Tibbetts? She lost her life. She wasn't brutally murdered. She lost her life. Just like you lose your car keys or you lose your cell phone. She just lost it. It wasn't brutal. It wasn't something that happened to her that shouldn't have happened because the person shouldn't have been here. She goes on to tweet, my hope is that her family will find peace and justice and that her murder is not used to justify a discriminatory immigration policy. # apologies are my own. Okay, thanks for that garbage apology. I mean, we have to accept it, but it's garbage. All right, when we get back, we're going to have more for you. Stay there. Stacey on the Right.
80% of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love could save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Recently, Jay Cost wrote that the Declaration of Independence was more radical than any of the men who signed it. Once you understand that important point, you can give more credit to the document than it currently receives on most college campuses. The standard line is this. Thomas Jefferson wrote that all people are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, but he was a slave owner. There's a significant disconnect between his words and his deeds. Jay Cost, author of the new book, The Price of Greatness, argues that the Declaration set in motion the means to remove all governmental privilege. Over time, the Declaration was used to eliminate property restrictions for voting, then abolition, women's suffrage, and voting rights of African Americans. Wrote in the first draft of the Declaration of Independence that the king waged cruel war against human nature itself, against a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere. These words were rejected by representatives from the southern colonies. Jefferson also expressed his opinion that slavery was a hideous blot and that it constituted moral depravity. He also led an effort in the Virginia legislature to ban the slave trade. Later, he proposed a program of slave emancipation and even urged federal legislation that would have banned slavery in the territories. None of that is to defend Jefferson, but at least to provide some context that is often missing in both academic and popular discussions of Jefferson and the Declaration. The document may not have banned slavery, but it did provide the foundation for the changes we enjoy today. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
It's hard to know the good guys and the bad guys. I should be criticizing Trump on every level because he does certain things that cause for criticism. But when I look at television and I see all of these announcers become experts and they're pointing their fingers and they're not doing the doggone thing but pointing their fingers, I find myself really pulling for the president. Now, that will make me very unpopular in the black community, very unpopular with a lot of Americans. But I think that there are certain good things that are coming out of this presidency because we've never seen anything like it. I mean, there's confusion. A lot of people are retiring. A lot of people are giving their opinions. And we have to really dig deep down inside to come up with the right kind of an answer. But here's my answer to all who wants to criticize me or who don't believe that I'm a good American. I believe that I have to work on myself first to be as good a person as I can be, to back up my country in the best way I know how. And the second situation, I should be helpful to those people who need help, that don't have life as good as I have it. And if I do those two things, then I think I'm making my contribution.
Oh, well, riots in the streets. There's a black man, Jim Brown, telling the truth about his support of Donald Trump. And he boils it down to what he's doing to help the least among us and telling the truth. And the rest of it, he just doesn't care. And this is something that you're going to find over and over and over again with black conservatives, especially, but minority conservatives, in particular, and people on the right in general, which is, at the end of the day, does it really matter how many people email you mean things or say mean things about your family? Does it matter how many times someone uses the slang, "you're not invited to the cookout"? Does it really impact you when you know that there are people out there who just because of political ideology will set you aside and say, you're just not worth it anymore? And then there's a whole world of people who are willing to judge you on who you are and what you believe and whether or not you're a person of character. I'd rather take my chances with those people. And so when I hear someone say, and this happens quite a bit, I mean, I can't tell you how often, it's like every week someone will tell me, sometimes to my face, oh, it's so sad because you think white people care about you. So, I used to get really upset. Like, what? I don't even know what to say back to that. Like, first of all, which white people are you talking about? And then second of all, why are you going there with it? If you disagree with me politically, why not just disagree? But that's because there's no argument that can be had from the left that can withstand the facts and logical presentation of the truth on the right. So it has to be, well, you just doing stuff for white people, but they don't care about you. So okay, if no white people care about me, and I'm not sure that's exactly accurate, but let's say it is. Now what? So if it's about caring about me, I mean, how does that change my political views? In other words, well, they don't really like you. They're just using you for your political views. Okay. I heard someone actually describe a working relationship that way. I was talking about consulting for somebody and said that this person said, we're not the best of friends, but the consulting relationship really works because I can provide this consulting service and their company really needs it. So in the truest sense of the words, of the truth of that relationship, it's really not about the two individuals liking each other. It's that they have a business relationship where one person's providing a service to the other and they're exchanging money for it, capitalism, and it's working out for them. And so in that instance, if you said, well, that person don't care about you, they would say, no, they don't, but they care about the service that I can provide. Now, if you're breaking it down to that, I'm working for my employer, I'm getting paid for my work, there it is. But if we're talking about things that we believe politically, we all know it goes deeper than that, because for the Democrats, it's like a religion. It's not a religion for me. I don't believe in conservative principles or being a Republican or anything like that as a belief system that is overarchingly more important than, say, my belief in God, my belief in the Bible, my desire to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And I mean, come on now, marriage and family. Then you get into the politics, that then you're like, okay, the politics are kind of important, but only as a tool. And so it's about right living. And I think if you listen to what Jim Brown was saying, you know, he's a black guy, he's older, so he's been through some of the tougher times in our country as it pertains to race relations, and he made it through unscathed. And he's an NFL Hall of Famer, so he's an accomplished individual. He's not someone who has tried a few things and failed or just sat around and not tried anything. He's someone who has he has a history of excellence under his belt. And he seems to me to be saying that it's the morality of the issue that's important to him, helping those that are less fortunate, being out in the community and being a part of trying to help raise people up. Interesting that he doesn't see the fact that he supports Donald Trump and some others might, have a problem with it as something that would change what he would do on a daily basis. He's saying, I'm going to still go out there and I'm going to help people and I'm going to still tell the truth. And I'm going to support this president because he's doing things that are improving people's lives. I don't know. I think, that's important. And if more of us approach this whole situation in that way, instead of just saying, look, I'm a Democrat, or look, I'm a Republican. Okay, good. But now what? Now that you've shared your ideology, now what? Does that mean, if you're a Democrat, does it mean that you believe in running people out of the street? They can't be in public, they can't pump gas, they can't buy groceries if they support Trump? If you are a Democrat, do you believe that Antifa has the right to set cars on fire and burn things to the ground whenever someone comes to town to speak that they don't like? Do you believe that ICE members should have their home phone numbers and addresses and their wives and children's, whereabouts exposed to the public so any crazy lunatic can, pick them off? Do you think that Republicans who work in the House and Senate should be gunned down on baseball fields? And I know what happens. Democrats will say, well, of course I don't believe that. But you support a party that is condoning that. The media is condoning and making light of what's happening to Americans who support Donald Trump. We're being called Nazis. And remember, we're all Americans. Our shared enemies are actually Russia, China, some of the more rabidly pro-Islamic nations around the world, Cuba. If they had any might, they would do some serious damage. They can't. And, it's because of the communism that they don't have any might. But if they had some, they wouldn't just be down there doing whatever it is that they do. So when I look at all this, it's just like we're just listening to Jim Brown telling the truth here. And in essence, he's just expressing what a lot of Americans believe, just like our caller from earlier was saying. It's not that I adore Donald Trump. It's that we're talking about Hillary and an existential threat to America as we know it. Obviously, you're going to choose Donald Trump. And wow, what a benefit that in choosing him, we've gotten all of these additional benefits. He's actually followed through on a ton of what he said he would do. And on the rest of it, I hold hopes that he will. No guarantee, but I hold hopes that he will be able to follow through on and really shoring up that spending, which is kind of out of control. I have a comment here from Tracy Knight on one of the streams. He says, I'm white, I care. Not only am I white, I'm Alabama hillbilly redneck white that understands that if black and white Christians ever lock arms in the world, we'd be unstoppable. And he's right. That's how the body of Christ works. When we join together and say, you know what, you need to do what arms do, I'm going to do what legs do. We're the body of Christ. Let's work together instead of fighting each other. That's when God's work gets done on this earth, when we're taking care of the poor and the sick, and we're able to do exponentially more than we're able to do when we're distracted and fighting each other. The comment by Tracy is amazing. It's the truth. So the sound so someone called in and said, make sure I get my sleep. They can hear stress in my voice. I'm trying to speak into the microphone and be a little louder because we've had these audio issues where people say they can't hear. And so that's me trying to make my voice a little bit louder for this. And I think what we'll probably do this week is we'll try to get a sound check done to figure out what the issue is with my microphone not being loud enough. But I'm getting some sleep, and I'm also doing some walking every day because, you know, if you get outside and walk in the nature, it's a blessing to you. You come back feeling so de-stressed when you go out for a walk outside. And I have a treadmill, and I'm grateful for it, but I actually prefer to walk outside. And I think when the winter comes and I can't walk outside as much anymore, it's going to be kind of a bummer. But yeah, I don't mean to have that. It's like I'm trying to project to get my voice to be loud enough in the microphone so we can hear it. And what we have going on is, this is amazing. I'm really grateful that American Family has afforded me the opportunity to stream my show to different areas, but that means the equipment is all it's working together. It's like, you know, we've got the live streams, we've got the live show that goes all over the country. We've got Periscope and YouTube and Facebook. And so to make all of the sound work, you know, we have to do a little more tweaking, but it's coming together. The sound is better than it's ever been before, and I believe it will continue to improve. So I want to give you this. This is kind of a big deal, again, because of the whole Michael Cohen story. You're not going to hear about this in, on your mainstream channels. But I was able to find this story today pretty easily because it is important. Senator Marco Rubio vows to cut off aid to El Salvador following their China policy change. So if you're wondering about the China policy, every nation on the face of the planet has to decide whether or not they will recognize Taiwan as its own independent country, or if they will bow to the Chinese government in their assertion that Taiwan is a part of China. Now, the Taiwanese people want to be their own people, but the Chinese people won't let them go. So that's the stage. Senator Marco Rubio, as a Republican from Florida, has vowed to work to cut off aid to El Salvador after the country's government switched its diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. And it's a major policy shift. It's a move that could usher in the first Chinese-controlled military base in the Americas, which should be very concerning to all of us, especially if you care about foreign policy and American dominance. You don't want to see China with military bases in our Americas, North and South America. We don't want that here. It's a threat to us. So Rubio slammed El Salvador's decision to switch diplomatic loyalties from Taiwan to China, writing in his Twitter feed that such a move would be a terrible mistake for the government of El Salvador. He went on to question why the U.S. would continue to provide so much foreign aid to El Salvador after such a dramatic diplomatic shift. Now, he actually called President Trump about this, and they spoke. And Senator Cory Gardner, Republican from Colorado, is working with Senator Marco Rubio to draft legislation to end foreign aid to El Salvador after their leftist government has abandoned Taiwan. Rubio and Gardner are writing an amendment to the minibus appropriations bill that the Senate will consider this week. Taiwan earlier on the same day, yesterday, announced that they would sever diplomatic ties to El Salvador in advance of their anticipated shift to China. Taiwan had refused to foot the bill for the Port of La Union project. Now, you might be wondering, Port of La Union, what could that possibly be? And why would they need to foot the bill for it? So I want to get a little bit of detail on that. And this is something in arrival. So Port of La Union has arrivals and shipping schedules, etc. It's a very small port in El Salvador. And there's a live map online that you can look at that has the schedules for ships coming in and ships going out. The schedule for vessels who are arriving, which are port calls, and a list of ships who are currently in port, a company register, and a local weather forecast. So this is a port on the coast of El Salvador, and the Chinese want to be able to use that port for their ships because they currently have a number of warships in the vicinity of the United States, as they always do, observing our missile tests. I saw the story about that yesterday as well. And so what's funny about it is that if you're that concerned about the Russians meddling in our elections and challenging our sovereignty, then you would definitely be concerned if the Chinese government was making a play for a port in the Americas so that they could have a military base here. Wouldn't that be like supremely of interest to you? Yeah, I think it would, except it's not, because it has nothing to do with eliminating the presidency of Donald Trump. And that's why they're not covering it. It's that simple. It's crazy that it's that simple, but that's all it is. It simply does not matter, because if it doesn't have anything to do with unseating Trump, then it's irrelevant. And also, I want to give a shout out of amusement to the people who I put out a tweet about Molly Tibbet yesterday, and it got a little bit of traction on Twitter, and I got a whole bunch of liberal trolls who came into my feed to talk about gun violence and a whole bunch of other stuff, because they're not claiming any responsibility for Molly Tibbet's death because they advocate for sanctuary cities and illegal immigration. So they're deflecting. They want to talk about, mass shootings and the NRA and et cetera, instead of just owning up to the fact that their standing policy of sanctuary cities and pro-illegal immigration is what keeps bringing up these deaths of these innocent young women, just, gunned down, shot down, killed, what have you. So there's a couple of articles. What's interesting about Marco Rubio is he does a whole bunch of his Twitter feed in Spanish. So if you're American, you can't even, you can't even read that stuff unless you speak Spanish. He also, and I don't know if you guys know about this. I don't know if you've ever been to Marco Rubio's Twitter feed, but he actually incenses liberals by tweeting out biblical scripture that's along the lines of Republican Party platform items. I mean, it's pretty amazing. He gets right up under their skin. All right, we're going to be back with more right after this. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Normative behavior is defined by reference.com as the standard of correctness that follows the rules of society. Who or what governs what is normal in society and how we treat each other. News stories show a fraying in what is considered normal. Let's face it, our norms are under attack. We now regularly see elected officials call for violent protests, and the word resist has become a clarion call for uncivil behavior. It is not normal to harass people in public, period. It is not normal to incite violence against people that we disagree with. It's not normal to react to the truth with violence. Degrading our norms can only progress if we allow it. And make no mistake about it, each of us has a choice on whether or not to join the mob. Stand firm in refusing to allow the destruction of our norms by speaking the truth in love. If that is rebuffed, shake the dust from your feet. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, have you ever seen that bumper sticker of a fish with legs? What's that all about?
Chris, that bumper sticker is a direct insult to Christians and the God of Christianity. It's a perversion of the Christian symbol of the fish, which has been in place ever since the early church days. It's interesting to note that this has almost become a religious symbol with evolution. We've been saying for a long time that evolution is a religion, and now they have their religious symbol. Chris, they have to have symbols because they really just don't have any evidence that evolution has occurred. Evolution is not a science. It's the religion of naturalism, the idea that there is no supernatural God behind it all. At least that's how I see it from a Back to Genesis perspective.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Visit our web store at icr.org/store and use the promo code FACT at the checkout when ordering your That's a Fact DVD.
This is Fox on Justice. A memo from a lawyer working with the Office of the Special Counsel investigating possible wrongdoing by the President of the United States. The memo outlines a strategy for interviewing the President and urges the Special Counsel to be tough on the President. Quoting from the memo, "The idea of going easy on him at the questioning is abhorrent to me. The President has disgraced his office, the legal system, and the American people. He's tried to disgrace you and this office with a sustained propaganda campaign that would make Nixon blush. He should be forced to account for all of that and to defend his actions." The memo was written August 15th, 1998 to Special Counsel Kenneth Starr, and it then lists a series of graphic questions to President Bill Clinton about his relationship with the intern Monica Lewinsky. The memo writer was a 33-year-old lawyer named Brett Kavanaugh, now awaiting confirmation hearings as President Trump's nominee to the Supreme Court. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Are there any thoughts about the Balancing Act? I mean, having to also, so that urban Democrats, Democrats of color, feel like you're representing them too?
When you're in a state where every single Democrat on the statewide ticket was defeated in 2016, when you're in a state that voted for the Republican candidate for president by almost 20 points, you've got to do everything right as a Democrat. You can't just worry about motivating your base, although you've got to worry about that. You can't just worry about making sure you're accessible and available and listening to people who disagree with you, although you've got to do that. You can't just worry about talking to independent voters who voted for Jason Kander and Donald Trump, or voted for Mitt Romney and Claire McCaskill, but you also have to do that. So in order for me to win this campaign, honestly, I mean, this is as candid as I can possibly be. I got to do all of it perfectly. I got to do I can't make mistakes. I got to do it all perfectly. I got to be everywhere. I've got to be working harder than I've ever worked in my life, because that's the only way this is going to work. This is going to be a very close election.
Okay, I'm sorry. I burst out laughing uncomfortably when I was listening to her talking about the coattails of President Donald Trump on the electoral ballot here in Missouri. Now, that giggling does not alter the landscape here, which she's trying to paint herself as this underdog coming up from, an impossibly Republican electorate that she's had to bend over backwards to, kind of please these horrible Republican red staters, this impossibly red state. Yeah, it's not actually impossibly red. Missouri is a show me state, and we often have divided government. And the only reason we didn't have divided government this go round is because the Democrats ran someone who was just unacceptable. He was just unacceptable. And so the reason why Republicans and Missourians turned out so hard in 2016 is because the existential threat of Hillary Clinton was too much to stay home for. And we were tired of the kinds of things that we saw from Claire McCaskill. She's not pro-life. She's a Catholic. She claims to be a practicing Catholic who receives communion on a regular basis, yet she does not believe in the church's tenets of life being protected from conception to natural death. She doesn't believe in that. She actually sides with Barack Obama in, that's above my pay grade. If a baby is born alive after a botched abortion, well, I don't know, just let it die. I mean, I can't say what you should do with it. It's above my pay grade. She's a Catholic. Now, I'm no Catholic, and I've actually, I don't have to be one to be able to recognize that she is outside of her church's doctrine on abortion. It's not choice, it's abortion, and it is against the Catholic Church's doctrine for her to support it. The fact that she's allowed to receive communion is actually a pox on the priest who gives it to her. She should be forced to undergo the shame of not being given communion until she comes into right standing with the church's doctrine on life. It's just that simple. It's not partisan. It has only to do with what the Bible says about when life begins. So, she's not actually bending over backwards or being perfect in any way. She sides with the resistance. She's okay with Antifa. And she voted against the nomination and passage, onto the Supreme Court of Neil Gorsuch. If she really wanted to be perfect, she would have said, I can't actually find anything wrong with him. He does not appear to be unfit or incapable of executing his duties on the Supreme Court of the United States. Nay, he is actually well qualified and perfectly suited for the position. Regardless of political ideology, he belongs on the Supreme Court because he has been nominated. But she voted against him. And I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts, not actual cash. I'm not a betting chick, but dollars to donuts, meaning the metaphorical, not real betting, I still feel pretty certain that she's going to vote against Kavanaugh. She might shock me, but I'm pretty sure Claire McCaskill, in order to shore up her more liberal-leaning constituencies in the inner city of St. Louis and some of the suburban, moms demand action types, because she's on the wrong side of guns too. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. And I've invited her on the show to talk about it. So just in case you're sitting there, new to the show, welcome in. Thanks for being here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, and you're upset because I'm telling the truth about Claire McCaskill. I invited her on the show. My producer has reached out and not received any word back. And we know she gets mail from me because I've written her as a veteran and gotten a form letter back before. So we know her stuff works. Claire McCaskill, not willing to come on the show and talk about why she's on the wrong side of so many of these issues, why she plans to vote against Justice Kavanaugh, another well-qualified nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States. She plans to vote against him. If the state is that red, why doesn't she just decide to vote according to what her constituents have indicated to her? The fact that no Democrat won statewide, that's telling. That means it's time for her to move to the center. And she doesn't have to change political parties, but she needs to represent the people who've elected her. And if she doesn't plan on doing that, then perhaps it's time for someone else to man that station. Now, she says it's going to be a very close election. Probably so. I actually hope it's not that close. I'm not in favor of someone who is as rabidly pro-abortion as Claire McCaskill is, representing the people of Missouri. So again, I also want to just point out and I know Twitter is the Wild Wild West, and it's often not representative when you see people on here tweeting these crazy things. It's because they don't believe they'll ever be held accountable for it. But I gotta say, there's some really vile tweets on here from people who can't be held accountable for their tweets because they have pseudonyms for their names on Twitter. And they're saying here, and they're actually discounting the death of Molly Tibbetts. And it's not that I'm so obsessed with this one particular death. It's wrong. It's a tragedy. It's horrifying. Most people who I see on my Twitter feed, they're not caring about it because it's not their child and they don't have any empathy. But the fact is, for the Molly Tibbetts and Kate Steinleys of America who receive the national media attention, there's at least 2,000 other moms and dads who are grieving their kid being killed, whether it's their adult child or their young child, their 2-year-old, what have you. There are at least 1,800 other families who have suffered through the horrors of a kidnapping that may or not have resulted in the death of their loved one. There are over 13,000 other American families who've suffered through a violent altercation where the illegal immigrant had a gun and they either died or lost their life or lost a loved one or were shot and maimed in the course of that interaction. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are grieving or recovering from interactions with illegal immigrants. They matter. Their voices matter. They won't ever be on Fox News. They won't get the attention that the Kate Steinle case has gotten or Molly Tibbetts. And, if you're in my Twitter feed, I think, God bless you for tweeting me about how, I don't care about the victims of mass shootings and I'm politicizing the death of Molly Tibbetts. It's so cute the way you have zero ability to think through from point A to point Z and understand the lay of the land here. This is about illegal immigration because an illegal immigrant killed her. If you want to talk about people who are American citizens who've killed people, they're American citizens. The fact is, we have enough American citizens who are out killing folk without bringing in illegal aliens to do it. I mean, are you saying that you think that some other American would have killed Molly Tibbetts if this illegal alien hadn't done it? So, it doesn't matter? The fact is, she would still be alive. If you're an American citizen and you're here and you kill somebody, you're already under the justice system. We hope that you would be prosecuted and sent justice would be done and you'd be convicted and sent to prison or the death penalty. But if you're here illegally, you've already broken one law and you shouldn't be here. You should be in your own country killing people if that's what you're going to do. Not here. That's the point. And the fact that liberals seem unable to comprehend that, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that liberals don't understand what I just explained there. I believe they act like they don't understand and they deflect because they don't want to give up on their sacred cow, which is importing votes for the Democrats. And if you're supporting that, how can you? How can you? So when you look at Molly Tibbetts, online communications, it appears that she was on the left politically. Doesn't that matter to liberals? A person who politically was one of their own? So nothing else matters except that they support illegal immigration. That's where we are right now. If you want to call in, we have some time left in the show where we can hear from some more callers. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I was just scrolling through the Twitter feed and looking, and it's just some really hateful things on here. I mean, people who act like the wall won't do anything. Here's a lady, Elizabeth, who calls herself the gentle scorpion. What is that wall going to do besides sit there? How will it stop people from tunneling under it or flying over it to get here? You act like people can't use forged documents to get here. Your wall won't stop another woman from being here. It won't stop anything. Yes, it actually works great. Ask Hungary. In Hungary, they have the wall. And the wall prevents people from coming in. To the southern border is... southern border has a wall of Mexico. The southern border of Mexico, they have a wall. It helps. And so we just nothing but there's people on here. I had to block a few people for calling me names and then you look at their Twitter feed and it's 2 followers. They've been blocked so many times they just don't even try anymore. They just sign up for a new Twitter account and come on and do as much damage as they can. And there's a lot of people on here who are kind of like Molly's Wall, Build That Wall, Kate Steinle, Don't Waste Your Breath. Yeah. And one lady who says, I'll unpack this carefully. The only reason these murders occur is because we don't allow these Americans to be legal citizens. Don't you see? They're already branded illegal. Surely it's only another few steps to murder. Can you believe that's the thinking process of these people? Democrats actually believe that if a person is here illegally and they're not made legal immediately, that the next thing they're going to do is murder somebody. If you're an illegal immigrant, you should be insulted by that because not all illegal immigrants kill people. I mean, that is some pretty stunning logic. Democrats have such a low opinion of illegal immigrants that they think as soon as they enter the country, if we don't give them amnesty, they start killing Americans. And there's nothing we can do about it because they're already Americans. They just need to be made legal. Meanwhile, what do they think about black people? That we can't get IDs to vote. And that we're also, somehow subpar. Policies don't help blacks. It's amazing the things that Democrats think and will tweet about minorities. I guess they feel like they've taken one for the team by supporting a minority, so they get to say all the things. So the Democrats are worried about Mueller getting fired. And they're also worried that, the president will do it. And Cohen says that there's a conspiracy that was going on to collude, and he's not going to accept a pardon, which matters. That doesn't even matter. First of all, Trump's not going to pardon Cohen. And second of all, if the president decides to pardon you and you've been convicted of a crime, it's not like he sends you a note and says, will you accept this pardon? You just get pardoned. And you can say you don't accept it, but your crime has now been pardoned. Boom, it's done. It's not going to happen. I don't even know why he's talking about it. The president is not going to pardon him. Now, the New York investigators have subpoenaed Cohen in their investigation into the Trump Foundation. Meanwhile, none of the Clinton Foundation's activities have been investigated. and the people of Haiti. Did you know that Haitians actually protest the Clinton Foundation pretty much year-round? They protest because the Clinton Foundation raised millions of dollars for Haiti, but instead of giving the money to the Haitians, they used it to fund Chelsea's wedding and a bunch of their own private things. They spend like $8 per 100 on actual helping of people in all of these different countries they claim they're helping. 92 of the dollars go to the Clintons. Isn't that amazing? $8 out of every 100 go to somebody who is in need. The rest of it goes straight to the Clintons. But New York is investigating the Trump Foundation. Not the Clinton Foundation, the Trump Foundation. The double standards never end. That's the show. Thank you for being here today. God bless you. Have a fantastic night. Find me online, StaceyOnTheRight.com.